So with Tim, without any further ado, I'll pass it across to you to give us an overview to KST and AirScout and how you can use it for long distance DX on VHF and UHF. So Tim, the floor is yours. I'll just share the screen with you.
Yeah.
And you should be able to go if I click on the right thing. There we go.
I'm trying.
Okay. You should be able to, can you see it now? Okay.
Yeah, I can, yeah.
Okay, there you go.
So that should be not the screen you want to see, but this one should be. So can you all see the presentation? Great. Okay. So this is something that we as in a few of us that do the VHF contests have got into over the last year or so, and have been getting better at it. And it's quite a nice way of working some long distance when either the conditions are totally flat or your home QTH doesn't lend itself to working VHF usually. And with the lockdown and being forced to work from home, I've using this, I've actually managed to get some quite surprising contacts. So I figured it's a useful thing for people to play with who are, you know, stuck in those not so great locations, or you know, stuck at home and want to work some DX. Not just necessarily for contesting. I find people are using it just in general. So although some of my talk is kind of overlapping contesting a little bit, try and ignore that because it's relevant even outside of that. So airplane scatter, what is it? Well, we've known about it since the 1930s when people realized that radio reflected from airplanes and used that to build radar systems, which saved our bacon back in 1939. Radio hams have been using it since about the 1980s, and somewhat discovered by, I wouldn't say accidents, but people were hearing stations they shouldn't be able to hear, beacons, and thinking, oh, there's a lift on, and then it was gone again. And it took a while for people to work out quite why. But this chap called Frank, Delta Lima 2 ALF, has kind of grabbed the bull by the horns and really made it accessible to everybody. Some really nice software that he's put together to make it accessible to everyone, so that you can find someone to work and arrange a contact and make that QSO. So we're going to see some of his software in a little bit. There is a page at the end of his PowerPoint, which I'll share with everyone, that's got links to all of his software so you can download it. And there's lots of online articles and how-tos. And if you go onto YouTube, you'll find lots of videos around AirScout, etc. Essentially, the principle is as in that diagram. Over a range of 600 to 1,000 kilometers, station A can work station B by getting a bounce off an aeroplane. And there's a lot of maths involved, which I'm not going to go into tonight, but things that discuss sort of minimum elevation angles, distances, what's line of sight, etc. But essentially, if your radio can see the aeroplane, and the aeroplane is in the path between you and the other station, and the distances are not too near and not too far, you should be able to get a signal bounce off of an aeroplane and work the other station. And then there's a whole load of maths around that determines how much signal you need in the air, gain of antennas, height above ground, what's on the ground wave between you and them, etc., to determine the likelihood of making the contact. And this Frank DL2ALF has done all that maths for us and made it fairly simple to see whether or not you're going to work station B if the conditions are right. So you can work up to about 1,000 kilometers. I would say 1,000 would be a really good one. We in those that do the VHF contesting regularly get several hundred kilometers out of it. Working up into Scotland or Northern Ireland is not unusual, even on low power. And you, as I said, you can work from valleys, because generally speaking, for VHF, UHF, you need effectively a line of sight contest or some good conditions. But actually, the aeroplanes are in the air, so even if you're in a valley, if you point upwards at the aeroplane, you can still work them. So for me, it means I can work the north from home, even though there's a dirty great big hill directly to my north and I'm at the bottom of it. So it's a great way of working stations that you wouldn't normally expect to use. For those of you that haven't heard an air scatter contact, there's various examples on YouTube. I'm going to play one now, which is a contact between the German station and G3OHM, and hopefully you'll hear it. If not, you can click the link afterwards. I'll share the links in the PowerPoint. But you'll hear the difference. You'll see the plane flying across the path, and as the plane crosses the path, you'll hear the gain in signal, and then you'll hear it die off again as it passes over. So it'll give you an idea of how big a difference the having that plane can make. So I'm going to open this and jump to roughly halfway through the recording, because the first bit of it's working some German stations which we're not going to really understand. So let's see if this works.
Call again, please make a longer call and Salima 0 Golf Tango Hotel. Contact. Call again, please call again. Golf 3 question mark, call again. Golf 3 Oscar Hotel Mike Portable, you are 59023. 59023 in Juliet Oscar 50 Juliet Papa. Go ahead. Thank you very much for the Q273. Good luck.
Okay. So as you could, hopefully you heard, it's a fairly short QSO. You're not going to rag chew on airplane scatter. You've probably got at most 30 seconds to get your QSO in, but the readability picks up incredibly quickly and dies off incredibly quickly afterwards. So you've got a very small window of opportunity, but it's a very, very readable signal once you've got that contact. Okay, so it's generally done using civil aircraft because they kind of announce where they are, and they're more predictable in terms of their flight path and things. So generally speaking, you will find you're working an EasyJet or a British Airways or whatever, and they have a ceiling of about 12,000 meters. So the ceiling, if you look at the sort of pink triangle in the bottom right hand corner here, the pink triangle represents the bit of airspace that the plane must be in order to work the signal. So the top end of that triangle is the 12,000 meter maximum altitude. The hot area is that triangle, and the sort of curved bottom parts are the line of sight limits. So anything below that curve is out of line of sight for each station, and the software will calculate what's line of sight, actually not just based on your grid coordinates, but actually it downloads mapping data that tells you what's around you in terms of high hills, etc., and other obstructions. So the green bit at the bottom represents all the high land between me, or the one station, and the other. So for certain directions where my minimum elevation is a lot higher than others, so I get better takeoff, and the software will actually plot that for us so that we can see which directions we can get a bigger rectangle of hot area. As you saw, most planes cross the path rather than fly along it, so your QSO time, if you're lucky, is 30 seconds or so. There are exceptions, and those of us that do the contests on Thursday quite often get an opportunity to work GM4AFF because it's a convenient flight from Luton to Aberdeen, and that gives us a nice plane that's pretty much in the right place for the whole of the flight. So if you can find one of those, and we did last time, then you've obviously got a longer stab at making the contact. So that's the theory. Putting that into practice is quite hard because what is your line of sight? How do you know where the planes are, how high they are, and which direction they're traveling in, and who else is out there in that path? It's great if you know that you're going to work Frank or whoever in the Netherlands, but who else is there out there? So you know where. Well, you don't know where all the planes are, and else you've got something to help you, but you've got this combination of planes flying around and lots of different stations out there. So how do you tie all that together so that you can know where to point and who to call for when? And they're all addressed by 2 bits of software. The first one is AirScout by DL2ALF, which does all the maps and the mapping of the airplanes and the calculations. And then the other is KST, which will show you, it's basically a messaging app, which will show you other stations that are on air and allow you to contact them to arrange a schedule. And this is something that's referred to as meeping. Don't ask me why it's called meeping, but it's a phrase that took me ages to figure out what they were talking about, but this is what it is, and you'll see an example of how to use this in a minute. So AirScout, it determines the line of sight between 2 stations, and it uses mapping data from one of 3 sources. Depending on the processing power of your PC, you can choose the resolution of the data source that you're going to use for the mapping, but potentially down to a resolution of about 30 meters. So it can include things like tall buildings and stuff in the way. And it needs to know things like the altitude of each station, how high is their antenna, what's the gain of their antenna, what obstructions are there in the paths. And using all of that, there's some very clever maths, and on his website, if you're really interested, he actually goes into the maths and the formulas that is used to calculate it all. But I think that's a bit too adventurous for this conversation. It also determines the location, the altitude, and the direction of the planes, and it uses the ADS-B telemetry data that the planes transmit. And there are a number of websites, stroke web services on the internet which host this information, and AirScout pulls the data from those to know what planes are up there, where they're headed, etc., and then work out which ones are the ones likely to give you a contact. If you imagine trying to do that without those 2 bits of information, it would be almost impossible, and usually a case of pot luck. So it calculates that hot area, that triangle between you and the desired contact. It can also do that for multiple at the same time. So if you know you want to work Frank, or I might want to work, a couple of other stations, it can watch it can watch multiple stations and tell you when one of them is going to become likely. So if there's a group of people you want to contact, add them to a list, and it will watch them for you. And it will also calculate how likely you are to be able to make the contact. You can tell AirScout how much power you're putting out, the gain of your antenna, how high your antenna is, etc., and the same for the other station you're working. And using all of that and the size of the plane, etc., and how close it is to the path, it'll give you a likelihood of how good or not you're gonna get a contact. Obviously, the bigger planes are better, but you can bounce off the small ones. Andy, N5KST, I think it is pretty convinced he's bounced off Cessnas in the past. So, anything down to tiny is good. And there are comments on the internet about people that have done air scatter off of the ISS purely because it's the only thing logically that could have made the contact over the sort of distance. Obviously the altitude's a lot higher, but yeah, you can bounce off pretty much anything that's going to reflect a radio signal. And sometimes you know you're working air scatter, but there's no plane there, so we can only presume that is probably military or something. So KST, sorry, yeah, KST is the online messaging app. So ON4KST produced like a chat room forum thing for different bands. So there are different chat rooms, one for 50/70 and one for 2 meters 70 sems and another for microwave and above. So if you go to that website, you need to register, but it doesn't cost you anything. And once you're on the chat, you can see who else is logged into the chat. And these are chat rooms that are used by VHF, UHF users to arrange schedules for DX. And it's not specifically aircraft scatter, it's anything. So any of these sort of VHF propagation methods, meteor scatter, EME, planes, etc. Anything where you'd want to arrange a schedule for something that's not a routine QSO. It lists for each user where they are, so their Maidenhead grid locator, so you know roughly where to point the antenna. And the idea is you can see who's online and ask them to arrange a QSO. As I said, it's a web page, so you can just use KST using a web browser, but there are other apps around that make life easier. And the one I use is the one that comes with Minos. Now, Minos is the contest logging software that we use. But that aside, it comes with a great KST app, and the benefit of the Minos app is it integrates with AirScout. So you can download Minos from this website, and you can run the KST client without having to run the rest of Minos. So ignore everything that comes with Minos if you're not into contesting, and just run the KST client. I'll show you how that's used in a minute. And the benefits are that for each KST user, it will actually calculate for you how likely you are of getting an air scatter QSO. So rather than try and pick one at random and see if there's a plane coming, it will do all that for you for everybody that's logged into KST and say, hey, your best chance of getting an air scatter contact is Delta Lima, whatever. And then you can focus on the ones on the low hanging fruit. It will send the KST user list to AirScout, so you can pick multiple ones at once. So if you hear people working another station, you can add them to the list of stations you're interested in, and then when an airplane comes over, it'll tell you, hey, there's a good chance of getting a QSO now with, you know, GI whatever. It'll also tell you how long to wait before there is going to be a plane coming. So, you know, if you see that there's a plane coming in 5 minutes, you can send a meet to G6GEI SNA and say, hey, there's a plane coming in 5 minutes, can we have a go? And then they'll prepare themselves to turn the beam to you in 5 minutes time. And because it's an open chat room, essentially, you can watch other people arranging the QSOs. So if you haven't done it before, I suggest you just watch the chat on KST and see what other people are doing, and you'll see the sort of typical chatter when people are saying, hi, can we have a go at working air scatter? And just watch how they do it. It's fairly simple. So it works on 6 meters and above. So we in the club, we've done it on 6 meters through 23 sems. You don't need huge antennas or lots of power, but obviously it helps. And I'll say it's easy, but we are doing it more regularly. So it's a fairly reliable form of communication, but it differs from location to location. So when I'm doing it from home, for example, I find I'm more likely to get a contact if the plane is very close to me. When I'm on the hill, I'm more likely to get a contact if the plane is about halfway between me and the other station. I think that's all down to the surrounding geography and what's in between me and the other station. So if I'm at the bottom of a hill, the plane's got to be close because I've got to have my antenna or my radiated signal more elevated when I'm on the hill, where my radiated signal could be more horizontal. You need to be very precise with your locator in AirScout, so more than the typical 6-digit Maidenhead locator. AirScout will know about obstructions down to fine detail. So the more precise you can specify your location, the more accurate its predictions will be. And the best thing to try to start with is beacons. So if you're trying to see if you can get an AirScatter contact, try beaming towards one of the Cornish beacons, and if you obviously know where it is, you know what frequency it's going to be on, so you can get ready for it, and you can't hear it. Run up AirScout, put its location in, and wait for a plane to come along, and then see if you can hear the beacon. And the chances are you probably will. So you saw a brief shot of the AirScout screen earlier on the video. This is what it looks like when you're running it. When you're entering the station that you're interested in this case it's PE1EWR, it will plot the path between you and the station you want to work. The path will be coloured, and the bright purple bit of the path is the viable airspace where you can get an aircraft signal. So in my case here, anywhere along the path is viable. It's a very good route between my location and PE1EWR. The triangle here is pretty much most of the airspace, and the little plane here is indicating, well, it tells you what the type of plane is, how long it is until that plane is viable. So the 0 minutes here is indicating that it's viable now. The squint is how far in degrees and minutes off the actual bearing to the other station the plane is. So obviously the smaller the squint, the nearer to the path that it is. The altitude here is shown right in the middle of the usable hot area. So this is a really good opportunity that we're looking at on this one. The planes are color coded, so pink, the bigger the plane, the more likely it's going to get a bounce. The grey ones are planes that are in range but of no interest because they're not flying in the direction of the path. The red ones are the ones that will be viable. So if they carry their current course, they're going to cross the path, and if you click on them, it will tell you how long before they get there. So that's a sort of graphical thing, and as you run this, you'll see the planes moving in real time. It's quite intriguing to watch. As I said, you can watch multiple stations. So if I know these two guys are on the air talking to people, I can multi-select and say I'm interested in these two stations, and it will watch them both for me simultaneously. And in this case, it's saying F4HRD isn't currently viable, but F1CBC is, and here's the plane. And he's viable now, but there's actually another one that's going to be crossing shortly, and two more down here that are coming. So F1CBC is probably a fairly good chance, and there's nothing flying around that's going to give us a contact with F4HRD anytime soon. The other thing that's annoying is you'll find sometimes you're just getting ready to work something and the plane disappears off the map, and the explanation there is the damn thing's landed, which happens far too often. It's very annoying. But obviously you know where the airports are, so you know if it's going to touch down at Gatwick, you're not going to get the opportunity to work in. So as I said before, you need to set up AirScout, and the first thing you do is get your grid coordinates in as accurately as you can. So if you look up your latitude and longitude either from a GPS or get it off Google Maps or something, and it will calculate your Maidenhead locator. So we normally only worry about the first 6 digits, but if you can get it accurate, then AirScout will work it out to 10 digits. Then for each band that you're going to work, you tell it as much as you know about your antenna system. So how high is your mast? What's the gain of the antenna and how much power are you putting into it? And then it can use that to do the maths to work out the likelihood of getting a signal that the other station is going to hear. Equally, and I don't normally do this, but you can put in details about the remote stations if you know them. So obviously, the more it knows, the better the accuracy of its predictions. So if you know that information, you can enter it here again for each station. So this is a per band, and this is a per station, per band thing that you need to enter. You need to activate AirScout in network server mode. This is so that the KST app can communicate with it. And the things you need to note are the name, which you just leave the defaults as AS, and the port number. So you need to make a note of those because you're going to tell KST that's how it finds AirScout. If you wanted to, and you've got multiple PCs, you could share one AirScout between them. So something for us to consider for contest day, maybe field day. You don't have to use KST with AirScout. You can use it on its own, but then you've got to maintain the list of other stations yourself. So I suggest you use it with KST. You tick the box, and then everybody that's logged into KST will be available to you to select in AirScout. Okay, so the KST client, this is the bit that does the chatting. You download Minos from that website. Install it to the usual path, cMinos. Those of you that are going to use Minos, that's fine. Those of you that aren't, who just want the KST bit, the app you want to run is this one, MQT KST Client XE. And you run that, and the first time you run it, it will ask you to enter some details here. So obviously these are your login details for the KST website that you registered on. Obviously your password, whatever that might be. I've actually created two accounts. I've created one for G6GEI and one for G6GEI/P, because then I can store a different locator against each one, which helps people when they're trying to beam towards me. The other thing you can do is change your name here. So rather than just be called Tim, I can be called Tim 6M or 6 meters, or it can be called Tim 50225. So people know that my calling frequency is 50.225. Which helps. It's a kind of way of cheating if you're contesting, I think, but it's allowed and everyone does it, which seems a bit odd to me, but there you go. So you enter your details, and that's pretty much all you need. Make sure you get the AirScout settings here, the same as those that you entered in AirScout, so it can communicate with the other app. And then the KST client screen looks like this. You can log into multiples of the chat at the same time. I'm only logged into one, the 50-70 meg chat, but you can actually log into more than one at once if you wish to. So you might be running, several bands and might be looking for the opportunity to work multiple stations. So the top left-hand area is the list of everybody that's logged into this particular KST chat area. The top right is the ongoing chats. So you see everybody else having their chats. So you can see who's talking to who, what they're talking about, what they're arranging. And quite often you can bag a QSO just by seeing that two stations are arranging a schedule on a particular frequency, and you can piggyback on theirs and work them after they've worked each other. So that's quite a good way of finding stations to work, or finding people who are actually making air scatter contacts. So you can then contact them and have a go. The bottom right shows you the chats that you're having. So when you've messaged someone or they message you, it will appear in this bottom right bit. So this is your sort of focused chat. This is everybody else's, and this bottom right is your chat. Bottom left is AirScout data, which I'm going to come onto on the next slide. And right at the bottom is if you want to send a MEEP to someone, you can put their call sign in here, just type the message, and then click the MEEP button, and off it goes, and then hopefully they'll reply to you. So we'll see all that in a minute. So make sure you're logged into the correct chat forum, or no one's gonna work you. As I say, you can log into multiples. So if you do log into multiples, make sure your active chat is the one you're actually trying to work a contact on. And make sure the AirScout band is the same as the one you logged into in KST, because there's two separate controls. And although they're linked, if you're using 50 megs on KST and 2 meters on AirScout, it's not really going to help because it'll get the maths wrong. So you can click a column to in the headings here. So on the list of users that are logged in, if you can sort them if you want by call sign, so you can click on the call sign column, or if you're looking for a particular locator, you can sort by location or you can sort by distance. The useful one though is you can sort by the air scatter column. So if you click on the AS column, you can sort ascending or descending, and obviously sorting descending gives you the most likely contact first. So you've got this color coding going on here. So I've sorted this list in descending air scatter, and in this case it's showing me that PA3 FEE is my most likely contact. The numbers 4 and 7 indicate that there are 4 planes currently viable and actually a total of 7 planes in the near future, so lots of scope of working with. You can filter the list, so if you're looking for PE stations or PA stations, you can put a filter in there and look for things. So you could look for, I don't know, if you're looking for JO00, for example, as a grid square to see who's on in JO0, you can just put JO00 in and it will list the stations that are active in that square. So it's useful for finding people that, you know, you're trying to work in a particular place. But if you're just purely looking to work AirScout, AirScatter, then the sort of sorting by the AirScatter columns are way forward. In that column, you'll notice for some greater than and less than symbols here. Greater than will indicate that the distance is too far for an AirScatter contact, so don't waste your time. And the less than indicates is too close for an AirScatter contact. In other words, you'd almost have to beam up into the air to get the contact from the airplane. So it's going to be too close to get an AirScatter contact. You still can do it. I have done it. You know, sort of 150, 200 kilometers, you can get an AirScatter contact, or it can help. I think it depends, but it's just not generally the norm that people would aim for. So if you select a particular station, we pick one that we want to work. You click the call sign in the list of stations that are available. So I click here PE5HV, and then it will break down. So you'll see here PE5HV is showing that there's 1 plane available now and 5 in total. So when I select him, it's showing that there is a flight here with a plane that's just 2 kilometers off the flight path at the moment, with a potential of 100, which is as high as it gets. So it's kind of like a percentage likelihood of working. So I've got an extremely good chance of working this station right now. In 3 minutes, there's another unknown plane coming. In 6 minutes, I've got another go. So this is someone I could come back to time and time again. So it'd probably be worth meeting him and seeing if I can get a contact. But actually, if I can't get him now, I'm probably unlikely to in the future because the likelihood is less. So that's the AirScout doing its maths on probabilities. So how do you do it once you've found a potential victim? Well, they need to know that you want to try and work them. So you send them a MEEP. So in the chat bit, for example, I'd enter the call sign and say, "Hi, Nigel, it's a plane in 2 minutes. Can we try?" And if Nigel's not busy and he sees his MEEP screen, he'll say, "Oh yeah, let's have a go," and he'll turn his antenna towards you. And then you'll both probably shout, or one of you will shout CQ or call their call sign, etc. And usually then, when you've worked each other, you'll give an acknowledgement that you've done it, and move on to the next one. Or one might hear and not the other, in which case you can maybe say, "Let's wait for a bigger plane," or, you know, try again on, 5 minutes or something. So it's relatively simple. If you are using KST for contests, don't meet your locator or serial numbers. That's considered cheating. But strangely enough, you are allowed to meet your frequency, which, although the rules say no self-spotting, it does seem to be allowed using KST. So I'm a little bit confused by that, but that's only relevant if you're contesting. You can find stations that are using AirScout or AirScatter by filtering the message list for the word plane. I've actually got mine running in background at the minute, so we'll have a look at that and see if there are any airplane contacts going on at the moment. I think there was one just before the meeting started. As I said earlier, you can piggyback someone else's schedule. So you watch other stations arranging schedules, and you can listen in on their QSO so long as the plane or path is close to you. And then when you hear the DX station and their QSO is finished, you can give the other station a call. And I've worked several stations by using that technique. Just not wanting to go to the length of arranging a QSO, but waiting first to see if I can hear the other station before I try and arrange one. And quite often you'll bag a contact, but you have to be quick, obviously, depending on whether the plane's flying across the path. I was very afraid of asking people when I first started doing this because I don't know them, and I don't like talking to strangers, which is a bit unusual for a radio ham. I felt shy to ask people for, on KST to arrange a schedule, but actually I've got used to it, and no one says no, and most people are very good about it. So you can message someone and say, oh, it's a plane in 5 minutes, let's have a go. And most of the time, unless they've already got another schedule arranged with someone, they'll oblige. And yeah, it's pretty good. So it can be daunting. Took a while to get used to doing it. Practice on beacons. Sometimes it doesn't work and you don't know why, and you think that should work, even though it didn't. And it feels really good when it does. So you can get, several hundred kilometers on essentially a QRP setup. Obviously, 2 planes are better than 1, and 3 planes are better than 2. You can get a better signal bouncing off multiple planes. And if you can get a plane that's not flying across, then even better, because you've got a longer go at it. And you will learn the best place for the plane to be for your location. So as I say, from home, I don't bother unless there's a plane really close. In the field, then I'm looking for a plane about halfway. So last week, I was trying to work G6GEI. I failed, but that was because I had QRP issues with my station that night. I would have worked in normally. But I'll play the video so you can see what it's like. A bit frustrating because I didn't actually manage a QSO. But I'll play this and just watch the signal strength of his signal when the plane's coming over compared to when it's not. You can hear him even without the plane, but the difference it makes is quite phenomenal. So let's see if this works for about 4 minutes 30. Come on. That's not going to work for some reason. Oh no, here we go. So let's go to roughly 4:30. So I'm going to jump the camera between AirScout and my radio so you can watch the signal strength. You'll see there is a plane there about to cross the path. You'll notice that the whole path isn't purple. So only that top purple section is the viable part where in that triangle. And there's a plane there that's currently red, and it's saying its time is 1 minute, and it's a squint of 52 minutes off the beam heading. But you'll see it fly into the path, and you'll hear the signal improvement from G6GEI as he crosses it. So this was last week. Sorry about the jerkiness on the recording. So it's about an S3, and the plane is just coming into the MEEP section.
Golf 6, Golf Echo, India, portable.
I thought that was me, but it wasn't. So there's now an S5. You get stronger. So there's an S7 now, S7 Plus. So that's sort of three or four S points difference in signal strength just by the plane crossing the path. Now you'll see the signal dropping again as the plane's passing away. So I've missed my opportunity now. It's too late now, I've missed him.
Golf 6, Golf Echo, India, portable.
No, so he can't hear me. So that's a failed contest. So as I say, it doesn't always work. But those of you that want to have a go, there is the software, and I do actually have KST running, and I did filter it by the word plane, but there was nothing. Okay, so there's not much going on at the moment. But this is the software. This is the sort of chats that are going on. As you can see, it's all over Europe. A bunch of Italians. It's an M0 there. So people use this for meteor scatter and all sorts of different contact modes. And if you want to message someone, you notice it's put the call sign in here. So if I wanted to message, I don't know, it's 51AT, I just click on them, it puts their call sign in, I can just type the message, hit send, and off it goes. If I want to look at who's available for AirScout, so I could sort by, say I'm looking for a particular locator, I can put in JO00 and find for someone there, or JO21, whatever. But if I sort by AirScout, yes, I can see I'm actually logged into two bands here, 6, 4 and 270. So let's pick this guy. So if I click on them, you'll see it populates the AirScout data down here. There's actually multiple planes right now, and if I click on this, show me the user path in AirScout, it will open the map for me and show me what's going on. So obviously that's on a flight path because it's very busy. That's a really nice situation to find yourself when you're trying to work someone. So there's 3 potential planes, including a very big one. So that's a pretty good opportunity, that one. Okay. So that's probably about it, unless people have got questions. I wouldn't say I'm expert at it. I still struggle. I'd say Andy in 5TKA is probably the best of us in the club at using this. He sort of bags a few each time we do a contest. But it surprised me how predictably reliable it is. You know, you can't predict it's going to work every time, but generally speaking, you can rely on getting an AirScout contact, and it's a great way of working DX even when there's no propagation. Any questions?
You don't need to know your 10 character locator because there's also a map function in there in the setup, so you can just click on the map to get it.
Yeah, I found it does that when you're first installing it, but then it loses the settings, so I had to go back and put it in again, and I used the grid coordinates.
Yeah, interesting. I've been setting it up as you've been showing us. I literally just got it running. But just looking at, I was trying to work out, how do you work out where you're beaming and how you're beaming from what's on screen?
Okay,
so this I've got the same guy up on my screen now.
Right, so you'll see here the QTF in the bottom right hand here, 90 degrees.
Yep.
That's the direction I need to point my antenna in.
Yep. So just beam it east.
Just beam it east, yeah.
That's it. There's no vertical element to it. It's just
no. So in most cases, if you read the DL2 ALF website, there is some small benefit in slightly inclining your antenna a little bit. Depends on your location, but of course the problem is that the elevation varies depending on the direction you're heading in, because you've got different height obstacles in different directions. So in some directions you want your antenna pretty much horizontal, and in others, like if you're at the bottom of a hill, you want a slight inclination depending on the radiation pattern of your antenna. There is a feature, if I go in here, come on, other screen, sorry, here we go. Stations, is it? Radio horizon, and this will tell you what the radio horizon is for your location in terms of line of sight. What's it doing? Perhaps I'm in the wrong place here.
That's the one you can click on to get that locator.
Yeah, there's one which gives you the elevation. I'm sure it was here.
yeah, that did it. It did do it for me. When I clicked on it, it showed me 2 overhead maps.
Yeah, I saw them.
It's drawing a very pretty diagram.
Oh, I need to go polar, don't I? Here we go.
I'm basically screwed.
It's just going very slowly, right? So it's basically taking my home location and telling me what the minimum elevation angle is. Now, obviously, for north, it's absolutely terrible, and then to the east, I'm actually not so bad, which is roughly right, because my house is looking southeast, and everything to the southeast and to the east is lower than me, and everything else is higher than me. So as it works its way around, you're going to see that I need to elevate the antenna more.
Oh, so the closer it is to the middle, the better.
Yeah.
In terms of takeoff. So like that suggests, the left graph suggests that the takeoff to the north is terrible because you'd have to basically have it vertical.
Basically, yeah, which is why I can't work anyone to the north from home except by, you know, some amazing conditions or an aeroplane. Normally anything that's between sort of west and north is non-workable for me, and you guys will be spotting stations I can't even hear. So the chart on the right is basically my radio line of sight, which is practically zero, as you can see when I'm beaming north. but I've got a fairly decent takeoff to the east, which is good for it. It means I can work into the PAs and things, even though I'm in a hole. My hole isn't. Now that is a gap. There's, I think that's for cutting at the bottom of the A5. And other than that, I've got that ridge that's just south of Milton Keynes, which is going to block me. And then anything west is uphill. So yeah, that's why it's so bad. So that's my home location. The hill location looks a lot better than that, but I have actually, it's almost the opposite on the hill. I've got a block to the east. So that's why I struggle to work into Europe sometimes from the hill. But the rest of the country is fine. So that explains a lot. And I'm, there's some high ground to the east of me. Anyway, that's usually a lot quicker than that, but I think it's because I've got actually AirScout running and a whole bunch of other stuff happening on the PC at the moment.
Oh, cool. You can overlay a map under it as well.
Yeah. So that's using all the data that we've put in based on antenna height and power, etc.
Any other questions for Tim at all?
And we need the travel industry to take off, so we've got more aircraft.
Yeah.
Is the effect?
I have to say, Tim, I thought it was very good. I do apologise. I had to disappear for a few minutes. I guess for those that have been involved in VHF for some time, as you rightly said, you know, we probably previously attributed this to enhanced tropo or QSB as the signal fades and comes from time to time. But it's absolutely fascinating to see this. One thing I've wondered is that if you were really seriously trying to do this, would it also work if the aircraft was offset off the path and both of you beamed at the aircraft?
I guess that would take some arrangement, but yeah, I guess it would.
Because one of the things I was thinking of is that if I know you talk about, you know, putting in a 6-digit location, but in the demonstration, you know, you were getting enhancement as the plane was flying into the path and then flying out of the path.
Yeah.
So I was thinking if, you know, you had, let's say, just as an example, you had 20 stations in London all trying to work that Dutch station, they'd all be thinking, oh, I can work him now. And of course, that plane's only in the path for a couple of minutes. And so if you're kind of squabbling over all trying to work the one station, your chances of actually making the QSO are reduced.
Yeah, and of course, that's beginning to be a problem. So at the moment, we're a fairly limited number of people using this. Obviously, it is busier during contest times, and the number of people using AirScout is increasing, but it's still a relatively small number. But as more and more people get wise to it, that is going to become a problem, and you'll be in the same old pile-up situation as we were before. As you saw in my recording, when I was trying to work GI4SNA, there was a short window of opportunity, and another station got in there. And by the time they'd finished working, I'd almost lost the opportunity. The plane had gone. So yeah, if you could predict both stations beaming off slightly, it would increase the potential of finding a situation to work. That's probably a good question for DL2 ALF.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be, I mean, a lot harder to calculate, and you'd have to continually adjusting beam directions all the time, which wouldn't be great. But I guess in terms of general contest technique, Tim, would it be useful to suggest that actually waiting until partway through the contest, in other words, not try and be in there at the beginning to work this DX station, because you might have 20 or 30 people all trying to work him, but let the mop up the local ones first and let the and wait for everybody to work him, and then it might be easier to get him 2/3 of the way through the contest.
I would almost agree with that, except that sometimes you find you have to work them when there's a plane, because there might not be a plane for the second half of the contest, but there's actually not that many planes in the air. You know, it's far fewer of them than it used to be. And trying to, you know, there are certain times when the PA stations or PE stations, you've got 2 or 3 planes there, and then for almost like an hour there's nothing.
Right. Yeah.
I'm inclined to say, if it's a plane there, have a go. What I tend to do is I use this multi-mode. So if I just pause that and go to multi here, I tick the ones I think I'm going to stand a chance of working, because you know, SEK is not on the list, but you know, you got the ones at Gi4SNA, for example. But there are some, there is SEK. So there's a few here that you know you can work because you've done them before. So you kind of tick the ones you think you stand a chance of at the beginning. You hit the play button and you leave it running, and you just have this in the background somewhere running, and it will indicate the ones that, you know, are viable. So
Yeah.
if you're calling CQ and no one's coming back to you, that's a good time to flick over and see if there's anything on the AirScout list that you could have a go at. In which case, I'd probably say, oh, let's try and work GM3 SEK, because there's a great big fat aeroplane right in the middle of that path there. That'd be a really good opportunity. So you could go over back to KST, meet him, and see if he's actually working someone. If you do that, you go to GM3 SEK. If he's actually on, he's not, but you could see generally they will, in their chat, if you filter the chat, it will show you what frequency they're actually working on, for example. So you can tune and see if you can hear him, because you know that actually it's a really good plane right between you and GM3 SEK. So if you beam in his direction, if you know what frequency he's on, you should be able to hear him. If you can hear him, you can probably work him. So you just need to either jump in at the end of whoever he's talking to. And this is a really good one, because it's not quite flying down the route, but it's not far off. So you've got a long window of opportunity with that one, as opposed to this other red one that's just going to cross it shortly.
And are different orientations, you know, how the angle between you and the aircraft is flying, does that change how effective the signal gets reflected?
I haven't noticed it, and I haven't seen it written down anywhere.
And when all the aircraft are plastic, we're all stuffed.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, it does help when you've got multiple planes. So obviously it is bouncing off of multiple planes at the same time.
Fascinating.
And as I say, you don't need a huge antenna array. I can work from home. So my home setup on 6 meters and 4 meters is just a 4-element Yagi, and running QRP 10 watts. So I can get air scatter contacts with that setup, which it's not massive.
Because I missed a little bit of the talk, Tim. Did you say whether it was more effective on 6 and 4 meters rather than 2 meters, or is it equally effective on all bands?
It's not equally effective, but I couldn't tell you exactly what the maths is between that.
Because one of the other things on the higher bands is more Doppler shift as well, depending on which path the aircraft's in.
But it's reliably, you know, the predictability of the software is very good, both on 6 meters right through to 23 SEMS. So I don't know which one would give a better signal, but certainly I can work AirScout or AirScatter on 6 meters on QRP on a 4-element Yagi from home, so I can get into certainly the GD stations from home on low power, which is uphill for me and in my RF black spot usually, so I can't normally work anything in that direction. So it gives me the ability to work some long distance from a pretty crap QTH, and I think you're in the same situation, aren't you, Martin? Or is it John? No, it's John that's in a similar situation.
Yeah. I can't work GD or SEK or GI without aircraft scatter. I have one massively exciting one with SEK, where I was waiting about 5 minutes for 3 aircraft all to be in the path, and he came in like BBC Radio 4.
Yeah, this is my favourite, this chap here in Aberdeen, because it's a great distance.
Yeah,
and there's a regular EasyJet flight on a Thursday, so you've got a fairly good chance of getting him.
I've not used the KST filtering facility in Minos, and I have to say it looks really quite impressive, because if you're just normally using KST as a website and it's scrolling through, especially in contest, it's so easy to miss a particular, you know, if you're looking for SEK, but it's muddled in with all the other chat messages. So that filtering capability looks quite impressive.
Yeah, if you're looking for a particular station or a particular grid. The other thing I look for is usually plane will tell you, you know, who's trying to work aircraft scatter. And if you're into data modes, you can say anyone working G6, for example, for cell, or working CW. So, you know, if you're looking for particular modes or locators, it's a great way of filtering. This is a great way of finding out who's on in a particular grid square. So if you're missing a grid square and you want to work JO03, you can see if anyone's logged in that square, and then, you know, meet them if you need to.
It's just finding room for it all on the laptop screen.
That's the problem, yeah. Yeah, you really need 2 screens. I use one for the main Minos logger, and I use the second screen for AirScout stroke KST, laid out exactly like I've got it here. Okay.
Tim, so go ahead, please.
Sorry?
Whoever that was. So Tim, can you put these slides up for us as well? I think the slides are really helpful, but and we've recorded this evening.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I'll put those on the Facebook group, and if anybody else wants them somewhere else, I'll just let me know. If you want them, I'll email them to you.
Okay, thank you.
How do I stop sharing my screen then?
I can probably do that actually.
Okay, yeah, I'll leave that to you
to do that.
Oh, I see. I've got it. Stop sharing.
There you go. So Tim, thanks for that. That was absolutely fascinating. Some of us kind of use it by chance, really, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work. But it's been a handy tool. What it's like in a real world once you get the right number of planes up there, I don't know, because we've kind of used it through lockdown and learnt it through lockdown when there's been about 1/10 of the planes up there, really, you know. And from others I've talked to, they just kind of wish these huge Emirates planes and things were kind of flying for the, you know, is it A380s, you know, the big ones, because they give you a big signal for a long time, and we haven't really had any of those, and in fact they're probably not going to fly too many of those in future either. So on that, but that was excellent, thank you, Tim, and that really is, I mean, you know, it's the sort of thing that runs 24 hours a day. You don't have to use it in contests, and occasionally I've used it for DX for you know, scatter, you know, to try and work stations, and sometimes it really does work. So thanks for that, Tim. That was an excellent run through. That's really helpful, and hopefully it'll give us a few people that are using it even more skills to use it more effectively, and others to try it out and see where it goes. I hadn't seen that kind of elevation thing before, so that's a new thing for me to try out and see what that looks like from my location here. So thanks, Tim. Difficult to clap you really, but just really thumbs up. That was excellent. And thanks very much for giving that this evening. So that's it. Well, we'll try and get the recording up in the next couple of days, and it will go on to the MCAR's YouTube channel, and there'll be a link to it in the library of our website. So you should be able to watch it from there as well if you wanted to run through again. Just to remind you again, next week homebrew. Week after that, our boot sale in the Irish Centre car park. And then we've got the speaker from Flex Radio after that. So a reminder of the programme there. So thanks, everybody. Have a good night. And thanks again to Tim for what was an excellent evening, taking us through that. Thanks very much indeed, Tim.
Thanks, Tim.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
Okay. Bye-bye, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Tim.